All right. So we are the Active Transportation Alliance. We are an advocacy nonprofit organization that advocates for walking, biking, and public transit across the city of Chicago and outside as well. These are our 2026 campaigns. We've been kind of focusing on this as well in the past year. So the one that we're going to be focused on today, Transit That Works, making sure that we have a financially stable system and making sure that it's affordable as well. Uh, the other two buckets are Safe Streets for All, so making sure that people who are walking and biking can get to their destination safely, and then clean and equitable transportation, making sure that we are lowering our emissions and helping people change mode shifts. So just some simple housekeeping and ground rules for today. Please introduce yourself in the chat, share what community you're coming from. That way people are aware who you are and where you are in the city. This meeting will be recorded. So it's already been recorded, so FYI, this will be posted on YouTube for people who want to watch it later or cannot make it the meeting. It's available. It will be available on YouTube. And then use the chat for questions. So when we go through the chat box, that's how we'll be going through the questions, and we'll save questions for the end.
Yeah, and actually, Alex, since we're using this is a Zoom webinar, not a Zoom meeting, so um the chat is disabled. We're using this different um format just because we've gotten bombed a couple times last year. So the Q&A is where you can ask questions, but the chat is disabled for this.
Then another way we could probably do it is to just let people unmute themselves down the line, but we'll get to that later. Other ground rules. Please be respectful of the presenter, so please pay attention and then keep mics muted. So for today's agenda, we'll be talking about two things. As I mentioned, so we have CTA's Better Streets for Buses plan, and as well as bus priority corridor updates by Jason Meter, who is the project manager in strategic planning at CTA, and as well as ATA's work with buses and bus rapid transit. Robert Schultz, who is our campaign organizer, will be speaking on that as well. And with that, I will just talk. Going up next will be Jason Meter. So some of the bus priority corridor study includes 5 routes. So those routes include Pulaski Road from Peterson to 87th, Western Avenue from Howard to 79th, Cottage Grove from 35th to 115th, and then Fullerton Avenue from Grand to Halsted, and 55th Street slash Garfield Boulevard from Cicero to Hyde Park. So these are the corridors that TTA has been focusing on, and I'll hand it off to Jason to continue on.
Thanks, Alex. Just give me a second to share some slides here. All right, hopefully everybody can see that. Uh,
Yep.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to discuss a bus priority project we're very excited to be working on. For those I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is Jason Meter, the Senior Manager of Bus Strategic Planning here at CTA, and the Project Manager for the Bus Priority Corridor Study, which I'll be telling you guys about. At a high level, the Bus Priority Corridor Study is exploring ways to make bus travel faster, more convenient, and more comfortable for riders. The past couple of months, we've been doing public outreach on the project in various formats. So some of you may be familiar with this project and heard some of my spiel already, but while this may be new to others, I'll try to give a quick overview and background, but also move quickly. I think there'll be time at the end for questions, though, and you can certainly reach out to me anytime for more info. So why are we doing this study? In 2024, CTA provided more than 180 million bus rides, providing vital connections to Chicagoans of all income levels, which is more than the total L rides, by the way. But it's not just bus riders that benefit from bus priority measures. Buses mitigate traffic by making efficient use of Chicago's street space. One standard bus taking up as much space as just 2 cars can comfortably carry 50 people. The graphic shown here demonstrates how buses can move more people in the same amount of space, but as we all know, buses can move slowly and get bunched, most often due to traffic congestion. The bus priority treatments we're considering for this effort include ways to improve bus speed and reliability by helping buses travel smoothly along our streets and avoid traffic snarls. This can attract more people to choose to ride the bus over driving and move people along these corridors in greater numbers with less congestion. So the study is a major next step in implementing the Better Streets for Buses plan, which is a citywide framework developed by CTA and CDOT a few years ago to enhance the bus riding experience through infrastructure improvements to streets, sidewalks, and traffic signals, which can be used to achieve faster and more reliable bus service and improved access to bus stops with enhanced amenities. The map here shows the Better Streets for Buses network, which includes 17 corridors and covers over 185 miles of Chicago streets. The plan does not, however, assign specific infrastructure enhancements to specific locations. So from these 17 corridors, we identified 5 corridors to study first in order to develop design concepts. These design concepts will then be used to seek funding for implementation. Alex already covered the 5 corridors, so I won't reread all of them, but just to run through it again, it's Pulaski, Fullerton, Western, 55th Garfield, and Cottage Grove. Together, just these 5 corridors alone provide 80,000 daily bus rides. These 5 were chosen to advance first due to a combination of factors, including their broad geographic coverage, ridership, public support expressed during the development of a Better Streets for Buses plan. And while we had to narrow down to 5 given budget and scope constraints with this project, the long-term vision is that we'll continue to have a pipeline of corridor studies and implementation to eventually cover all Better Streets for Buses corridors and then beyond that. So now let's talk about some of the potential improvements we're considering with this project. Bus lanes to keep buses moving in traffic, sidewalk and crosswalk improvements for safer access, traffic signal upgrades to reduce delays, upgraded bus stop amenities for better safety, comfort, and accessibility, and other street design changes that make buses faster and reliable and make roads safer for everyone. Now, CTA regularly works with CDOT to improve bus stop areas and incorporate bus priority elements into other streetscape projects to address pinch points. But this study goes beyond day-to-day operations or more targeted infrastructure improvements. It's about rethinking these streets entirely to support faster, more reliable bus service. There are many ways that we can improve infrastructure in the public way to allow for more efficient movement of buses. And what you see here are a variety of bus priority treatments. This ranges from red bus lanes on Chicago Avenue, which we now have 4 continuous miles of bus lane on Chicago from Grand to Michigan. Below that, you see a bus boarding island, sometimes called a bus bulb. This allows buses to let riders on and off without having to pull over to the curb and then merge back into traffic. In recent years throughout Chicago, in partnership with CDOT, we've built over 100 of these. You can also see 2 examples of bus boarding stations, which are platforms with additional amenities. One example is from Indianapolis, and the other is Loop Link in downtown Chicago. These projects represent how CT and CDOT are already partnering together to improve infrastructure for our buses, and we're really looking to expand that to corridor level installations. So some outcomes we're hoping for from this study is to develop recommended design alternatives for each corridor that reflect community feedback and can be advanced further. Recommendations may vary by corridor and location and could include robust BRT or bus rapid transit style designs for more limited section of the corridors. And then also some segments due to existing widths or community feedback may have less robust treatments, but still we're looking at end-to-end bus priority infrastructure improvements on all 5 of these. And then also identifying paths to implementation and potential funding sources. This could include pursuing corridor length projects to be constructed all at once, as well as opportunities to add the bus priority features during routine roadway resurfacing and other projects that are going on in the city anyway. The analysis, community engagement, and design recommendations from the study will be the first step for pursuing future funding to advance engineering and eventually implementation of these recommendations. So we're currently wrapping up the first of 3 planned rounds of public outreach for this project. Some of you may have joined some of these events, either in person or virtually. During this first round, we're gathering community input on early design concepts. Our goal is to better understand how residents and riders view the trade-offs involved in bus priority infrastructure, like the potential reduction of street parking versus repurposing a travel lane in exchange for a bus lane that can provide more reliable bus service. In incorporation, or after incorporation of public feedback and additional analysis, we'll come back to the community this fall and share refined design concepts and gather additional community feedback. The designs we share at that point will reflect what we've heard during this round of engagement. And then in early 2027, after incorporating what we hear in the second round, we'll publicly share final recommendations. So over the past few weeks, we hosted 3 in-person community meetings, one in Gage Park, one in Logan Square, and one in Washington Park. And we also had a virtual meeting, as well as smaller conversations with community-based organizations, aldermanic ward offices, and we conducted focus groups, which just wrapped up last night. So in light of challenges reaching as many communities as possible, we created multiple forums for people to engage and provide feedback. There is an online survey, which is open through tomorrow, and I'll get to that later. So there's still one more day to submit official round 1 feedback, but we're always collecting more. So far, some key themes that emerged from our conversations is that pedestrian safety is a top priority. Bus rider experience matters deeply, especially speed, reliability, and comfort while waiting. And local businesses have expressed some concerns about potential impacts to parking and access along these corridors. So before developing a range of potential design concepts, it's important to first understand how these corridors operate today. We began with analysis of traffic characteristics like traffic and bus speeds, traffic volumes, and traffic crash data, and also understand the physical characteristics of each street, such as where on-street parking is currently permitted, and also the prevailing curb-to-curb width of each segment. On the website, you can find lots of the reports and analysis and lots of information and data about the existing conditions. I'll share the design concepts in a moment, but before getting that, the impacts or trade-offs that we're trying to assess at this point are bus speed and reliability, pedestrian experience and safety, passenger experience, meaning the comfort and convenience waiting for the bus, access, particularly for left turns and cars accessing side streets, number of car lanes for general traffic, and impacts to any existing street parking that may be there. Some of the design concepts will require a shift in how street space is allocated, so it's important to understand what is most important for each community. And we know that every neighborhood is unique, and different parts of these corridors will have different needs, priorities, and challenges. For example, in one stretch, parking might be really important where there's a lot of commercial activity. In another, you might want to see as many pedestrian safety improvements as possible. If it's a high crash corridor, it's near a school. I'll note that most, if not all of the alternatives and types of improvements being considered have a net positive improvement to pedestrian experience, safety, and accessibility. So the type of bus priority treatments possible at a given location is largely based on how wide the street currently is. So we categorize each street by its curb-to-curb width. And you can see by the legend here that it varies a lot between the corridors and among the corridors, but design concepts were then developed to show the range of possible concepts given a different width. Segments with the same width have the same range of possibilities. For example, we can evaluate the southern portion of Cottage Grove similarly to the eastern portion of Fullerton. So now I'll walk through some of the design concept alternatives. So here we have two examples of common street widths, 56 feet on top and 70 on the bottom. These are not diagrams of specific locations, but to show a typical configuration at this width. You can see a common design for a major intersection on the left and more minor intersection on the right. And then the map on the far right shows where these street widths correspond to. Concept alternatives for additional street widths not covered in this quick presentation are posted to the website, so you can see similar stuff for covering every segment of every one of these roads. So here's where I think we get to the fun part is which is looking at alternatives. So we'll walk through 4 different concept designs that could work in places where you have 70 feet of curb to curb width, just as an example. You can see there's also impact dials, which correspond to each alternative, and that shows the relative impacts of each design for the main trade-off categories we talked about earlier. In this example, option 1 has center running bus lanes and bus boarding islands at the street at major intersections with 1 station for each direction of travel in the middle of the streets. This can maximize bus speed and reliability, but may require restricting some left turns and reducing the number of car lanes, as well as impacting small amounts of street parking. The concept would also provide an improved passenger waiting experience and improved pedestrian safety. So option 1 from the last slide is included here again on top, but we've added in another option below that to compare. This also has center running bus lane, but with a median bus boarding island at minor intersections. While both improve pedestrian safety, option 2 may require additional walking distance for transfer to other bus routes at major intersections. Option 2 would also have great benefits for bus speed and reliability, little impact to general traffic since 2 traffic lanes are maintained in each direction, but would have a large impact to street parking and left turns at some minor intersection streets. 2 more design concepts for the 70-foot street are shown here. We have a continuous offset bus lane with curb bump outs at bus stops at major and minor intersections. This retains most street parking and turning access. Still improves bus speed and reliability, but not to the same level as center running, mainly because the lane is shared with right turning vehicles accessing the parking lanes. The larger bus stop areas will provide space for shelters, but more robust station-like features may not be as feasible as it would be with the center running stations. And then option 4 shows a curb running bus lane. This provides about the same level of bus speed and reliability improvement as the one above it, but removes most street parking, whereas it doesn't impact the existing number of travel lanes for general traffic. So now let's look at an example of what would work at a narrower roadway segment. The options become more limited, as you might guess. The top diagram shows a typical existing configuration for 56-foot wide segment. And then option 1 shows a continuous offset bus lane with curb bump outs for bus stops at major and minor intersections, which can provide good improvements to bus speed reliability and passenger waiting experience. But this option requires repurposing 1 car lane while retaining most street parking and turning access. Something else we're looking at are bus stops themselves, which have an important role to play in the bus riding experience. This shows a spectrum of bus stop amenities. One thing to note is that sidewalk width is usually the limiting factor in determining what types of bus stop amenities can be at a stop. And because the 5 corridors vary so much in width, what is possible will vary a lot from one location to another. So you can see an example of a more basic bus stop. Then in the middle, there's kind of the example where the sidewalk is somewhat wider, so there's room for standard shelter and bench. And then you can see where it's center running or we create a lot wider sidewalk space. You can have something with a lot more amenities such as loop link type stations. So at the public meetings last November and December, over 120 people attended an in-person meeting and over 160 at the virtual public meeting. I also mentioned we had the smaller breakout groups and just finished up our focus group meetings this past week. However, for anyone that wasn't able to join, We have posted all of the meeting materials, including concept designs for all 5 corridors on the project website. We posted a recording of the entire virtual public meeting and also created a Menti activity and survey on the project website for anyone to provide project feedback. The Menti includes a version of the information I covered today and is designed to be taken by anyone, even if they have not reviewed other materials or listened to the presentation I'm giving now or one of the meetings. But it can be a way for those of you who have already been engaged to provide additional feedback as well. The survey has been open for a few weeks, but it is actually closing tomorrow. So if you do want to take that, do that today or tomorrow, because after that we'll incorporate all the feedback we received thus far via all the different channels, and then work with our consultant team to dive into traffic analysis on the preferred concepts that we're moving forward. I'll also note that all materials that are posted online and the online surveys are in English and Spanish. And then additionally, at any time, even after the survey closes, the oops, put it back up. The email address that you see here, betterstreetsforbuses@transitchicago.com, is monitored by me and my team. So we're accepting questions, feedback, comments, anything about this project at any time, and that'll be open always. And then also you can call 1-888-YOUR-CTA, which is a general feedback line, but then they will also direct any questions to me and my team if it's pertinent to this project. So again, over the coming months, we'll be working to incorporate all the feedback we received, refine the concepts, and then perform the analysis ahead of the next round of outreach later this year, which we're targeting probably for September, October, with all the traffic data and refined concepts. So thanks everyone for your time and interest in this project. I think we'll open it up for questions later, but if you scan the QR code, that'll take you to the website that's shown on the screen. Or if you go to this website, that's where you can find all the project materials I mentioned, the survey, and all other contact information. All right, with that, I think I can turn it over to Robert. Thanks, everybody.
Jason. Thanks, Jason. Just wanted to say thank you for spending your afternoon just sharing updates with people and giving people updates on what CTA is doing and keeping our buses rolling.
Yeah, thanks. I'm a self-proclaimed bus nerd, so talking about bus lanes is a great way for me to spend my Friday afternoon.
I'm pretty sure a lot of people on this call are interested as well on bus lanes. And with that, I'll hand it off to Robert.
Hello, everyone. Happy New Year. I think that's still appropriate. One of the last days of January. I'm W. Robert Schultz III. Simply call me Robert. I'm the campaign organizer at Active Transportation Alliance, and I've been around with Active Trans for either 7 or 8 years. I've lost track. So thank you for having me. I guess I logged on to the wrong place and I might have missed some of the introduction. So, but I have a question that I think people can post in the chat, right?
No, you can't post on the chat, sorry. It's only for the Q&A.
Oh, only for the Q&A. Oh, Lord.
Unless you should be
Okay.
able to, Robert. I think you should be able to put on the chat, yeah.
Oh, well, then I'm not sure my question will work out then. I was just here to talk about the work of the Transportation Equity Network. And my question that I had that I can't post is I was just really, really curious about, everybody has a community in which they live, and maybe a community that they work, but, Chicago has 77 communities and 240 neighborhoods, more or less. And, before I moved to Belmont Cragen and Logan Square, Ashland and Western were sort of my boundaries, and maybe something like North Avenue or Diversity on the south side. So I was just really curious I know people live somewhere, but if they are familiar due to whatever types of activities, their work or socializing or whatever, if there was another community that they're familiar with. The reason why I was aiming towards that, the Transportation Equity Network has been a project of Active Transportation Alliance for some time. It started out from some periodic meetings that Active Trans would have before I joined the organization that would that would bring together um, groups and organizations and individuals from Chicago's West and South Side, which have been traditionally underserved areas, and also areas where their voices might not be heard or recognized. And so over time, that desire became more and more formalized with the to be what now is the Transportation Equity Network. And for me, it's a very important work to do. I come to transportation issues from human rights and civil rights background, and I think that's important to highlight, particularly uh, one of the projects that we're working on right now is a Transportation Equity Day that will be held in just a few days on February the 4th, which is the anniversary of Rosa Parks' birthday. But in my mind, our work on transportation issues is part of the work working on democracy. It's bigger than bus lanes and bike lanes. It's the work we're doing reinforces democracy and community building. And there's a couple documents that are really important. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights talks about the right to travel. Um, we have various civil rights legislation in place now, particularly the American with Disabilities Act. And just recently, the state passed the Northern Illinois Transportation Act or Authority, NEDA, that's aimed to fix some of the governance and operational issues that we see with our transit system, as well as money. But I'm here to talk about our bus rapid transit work. And one of the first meetings I ever organized at Active Trans was gathering some people to talk about that. But sometime around COVID and George Floyd and all of those things, we came together more formally through a partnership of the Center for Neighborhood Technology, Equiticity, and Active Transportation Alliance to try to build the voices of a transportation justice community here in Chicago. And so particularly looking at the South and West Side and communities of Black, Brown, people with disabilities, seniors, and low income. Oh, okay. And so throughout this work that we've done or I've done in various forms, be that one-on-one meetings, the different forums that we've conducted over the years and focus groups, we found some of the themes that you heard about improving bus service that Jason referred to. And so we try to engage both CDOT and CTA around their conversations with regard to improving bus service. And currently we do periodic meetings, monthly or every other month with CDOT and CTA. And some of those meetings are reflective in the community work that Jason has referred to. Also, independent of what CDOT and CTA has done through the Transportation Equity Network, um, we were actually able to get some funding last year, or actually the year previous, but we utilized it last year to conduct town halls with some of our partner organizations. Um, and they would hold a town hall and would focus on a particular street. And the instance that I remember quite vividly, probably because it connects a major thoroughfare in my community, is Fullerton. And many of the themes that came up there are themes that you'll hear Jason referred to and are evident throughout our consideration of improving bus service. And probably the major one is the tension between parking and access, the issue that our streets, particularly Fullerton, depending upon where you are on the street, it's of different widths and things like that. And throughout our conversation with community groups, uh, we wanted to figure out what were some values and some principles that we could adhere to and come together representing communities. And I, I just want to throw this in gratuitously. There's a great book. If you've never examined the history of race and transportation issues, there's a lot of content and materials out there. But I recommend this book. It's called The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. And it just, I read it before I joined Active Trans, and it really crystallized some of the issues that have been evident in the United States, and as we plan our communities, and what caused suburban sprawl, and let me change my mic.
Is this a little better? Okay. So, anyways, so that's like some conceptual background to some of the things that helped us develop these BRT principles. And so one of the things was just building better bus corridors, connecting people to jobs and other destinations that they go to. There's a lot of information and data about that commute times for folks on the south and west side are generally longer and more complicated than people experience in other parts of the city. So as we work towards building a better bus network, that's one of the things we want to make sure that we're connecting where people want to go. Also, because of Chicago's history, one concern of many of the groups that we work with is making sure that whatever improvements come to a neighborhood, come to a community, don't operate as something to displace long-term residents. Um, and there's a lot of data and information out there if you want to pursue it. But what the Transportation Equity Network has come together is let's make sure that when we make these improvements and changes, that we're not displacing one group of people for another. Another principle we hope to see pursued is affordability. That's pretty self-evident. Accessibility for people with disabilities. I always like to refer to the fact that my first full-time job in Chicago 35 years ago was at Access Living, a center for independent living that worked on the rights of people with disabilities. And I learned from the agency's founder that we're all tabs, meaning temporarily able-bodied, either through some disability you may acquire through aging or otherwise, accidents or what have you. We all eventually experience some sort of disability. So designing for that actually has ripple effects. People with luggage, parents with baby buggies. So just keeping in mind that accessibility is an important issue. And lastly, safety. And when we talk about safety issues, it's wide ranging from the moment someone leaves their house to they board public transportation. And so, within each of these issues, there's still a lot of discussion. What does this mean? It might have a different nuance in one community versus another, but we're trying to work together collectively. In addition to the town halls and things that have happened around bus rapid transit and Better Street for buses, I just want to note two things before I shut up. Is one, several months ago, along the Western Corridor, 18 out of the 19 aldermen whose wards align along Western um, supported the idea of improving bus service along that corridor. So that's one of the reasons why we're inviting many of the aldermen along Western to our Transit Equity Day event that we're planning for a select group of stakeholders, including the CTA president, Nora Learson, on this coming Wednesday at the Park District. One of the big things, in addition to the town hall meetings we supported through the 10 network, was there was a lot of debate about, let's take a look see at bus rapid transit. Some systems around the world are better than others. We couldn't take a trip to Europe or South America, so we set our sights more locally, and we ended up on taking a trip up to Madison, Wisconsin, and to look at their bus rapid transit system there. We had folks from CDOT, CTA, the mayor's office, many of the community groups that we work with, and we were quite impressed. And you can take a look at all the other rapid transit information that's out there, and hopefully we can learn from other communities' benefits and mistakes. But we were quite impressed with the Madison experience. And I think the big takeaway for us was that we really had to get the political leadership in line to support these types of changes. So I guess that brings us back around to the reason why we're doing our Transit Equity Day event for a select number of public official, community group leaders, and we're looking forward to what CTA President Nora Learson is going to say about making Chicago the best world-class city for bus service. And that event is a work of Active Trans and our partners through the Transportation Equity Network. So thank you for having me. And sorry about the mic.
Thanks, Robert. It sounded way better after you changed up. It was a little scratchy, but people were still able to hear you. And with that, just want to say thank you to both our presenters today, Jason Meter and our own Robert Schultz. So just gonna go quickly through this slide. So it's Chicago Advocacy Hot Topic, just going through some of the advocacy efforts that have been going on kind of at the end of last year, and then what we're going to be focusing on for this year. So as mentioned, Robert, NETA, so Transit Funding and Reform was passed last year in December. That's going to be the new governance structure for what will replace RTA and do a little bit more regional planning as well as capital planning. So we're excited for that. And then I will hand it off to Jim to talk about capital bond funding and micromobility regulation.
Yeah, maybe before we jump into this, maybe we got a couple of questions about the bus discussion. So I don't want to muddle the conversation too much, but Daniel and Neville both had questions that are kind of related about how are we actually going to see this bus priority infrastructure implemented. Um, Daniel's asking, how will the new NIDA consolidation assist in implementing bus infrastructure while avoiding the challenges of aldermanic prerogative, interagency jurisdiction, and community pushback? These unfortunately killed the Ashland BRT project from like 2014. And Neville had a similar question, kind of what will be the plans for implementation for better streets for buses? We've talked about and have known what makes buses faster for a long time. BRT on Ashland was proposed like 20 years ago. We don't want to see these studies sit on a shelf. So how can we as advocates make bus only lanes everywhere a reality as soon as possible? And I know Jason, you talked a little bit about this. Kind of the study right now is to actually develop kind of preferred alternatives so that you guys can then go out and get money to actually build stuff. Um, but I don't know if you have more to say on either, with this kind of big structural change coming or how the process will actually lead towards implementation.
Right, right. I don't know if I have a perfect answer for either of these, but with the NIDA creation, I think that'll bring more to the forefront or bring IDOT into the conversation more, and includes creation of a transit office within IDOT, and that's another partner that we need on board, as a lot of the significant portions of the five corridors are under their jurisdiction. So that's kind of one way. I think NIDA will also be able to just have a larger voice in the messaging about, why this infrastructure is important. That being said, I don't know that it'll help us avoid challenges of aldermanic prerogative or community pushback. That's kind of, what we're seeking to, lay the groundwork on at this phase of the project is connecting, one-on-one with aldermen as they would like to, trying to reach out to the community as much as possible. And then I think getting to the second question about like what advocates can do to help is, make your voices heard with the, to your alderman, to the mayor's office, tell them how important this is to you, even understanding the trade-offs. Something else that I think can be helpful, particularly with the next round of outreach, is that in this initial round, we've gotten a lot of great support for this project, a lot of positive feedback and enthusiasm for it. But, I don't know that we've reached as many people that are opposed or not interested in bus lanes as we have, with the community that's engaged. For example, this conversation that we're having today is I would assume that a lot more people are excited about this project than skeptical of it. So if you are able, in the future to spread the word about these public meetings and try to get, some people that may not be as educated about bus priority or, less enthusiastic or more skeptical, we'd like to have those conversations with them too, the business owners, chambers of commerce, and other people that might be less prone to be supportive in the first place, so that we can talk to them about their concerns. And, while there always be, two points of view and trade-offs involved in these, what we are hoping to avoid and, by getting the word out there, you can help us avoid is, getting this project really far along and then have people come out of the woodwork and we're ready to put shovels in the ground, which is kind of what happened with Ashland. So, we're really trying to reach all the voices through multi-pronged approach here, but again, trying to get the people that are less interested engaged as early as possible, I think could be helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to add a couple of things. One is I think by looking at several corridors somewhat simultaneously, that sort of diffuses people's opposition to any one corridor. And number two, particularly along the Western corridor, as I reiterated, 18 out of 19 aldermen are already on board for seeing something happen. So at least along that stretch, perhaps the battle is won. And probably the last thing to just mention is at least a quarter of Chicago's population, more or less, are people that by choice or disability or what have you don't have access to cars. And one of the things, hopefully, that would happen with a Western corridor is that we'd see some sort of mode shift there, with some, higher speed buses, traveling that corridor. I'm sure everyone here on the call has experienced Western Avenue either in a bus or a car or on a bike or walking during rush, and it's quite a mess.
Yeah, I agree that I'd or at least like to think that the political landscape has changed for the better with regard to this since the swing we took at Ashland BRT.
Yeah, and I actually, yeah, so I was working at Active Transportation Alliance when the Ashland BRT went down, and I could say, um, both from the organizing standpoint and from like the public process that the agencies are leading, this feels like very different. I think CTA and CDOT have done a really wonderful job of being really deliberate in their process and like very transparent in how decisions are being made. Whereas while there was, lots of analysis that went into, picking Ashland BRT and all that stuff, I don't think that it was as public or taking as much time for people to familiarize themselves with it. And then, everything that Robert is talking about in terms of the transportation equity network, starting kind of with an equity first approach and lens, and really doing deep outreach with community-based partners that do have strong relationships with those local alders. That was something that didn't really happen around Ashland. There's a lot of grassroots organizing and canvassing that happened, but those kind of deeper conversations, because the process that CTA and CDOT are leading is a little bit more kind of thoughtful and comprehensive. We've been able to go and start building those relationships and those tables, and people are really excited. And one thing, and I'm not sure if Robert, you mentioned this or not, but we're continuing to bring those folks together on a monthly basis, and trying to draw in aldermen and their staff to those conversations so that everyone's kind of on the same page as the planning work kind of unfolds, so that people really aren't surprised about those trade-offs, when things do come up. I think a lot could be said about what happened with Ashland BRT, but there was the kind of people being concerned about not being able to turn left, which is like you just take 3 right turns and you're fine. There was a lot of concern about the impact on trucks in some of the industrial areas and some of the parking stuff. But actually, what I've heard on kind of reliable sources is actually the thing that might have been the nail in the coffin was pushback from some large corporate retailers, like Costco. And actually, they kind of bent the ear of the mayor. And while there was a lot of kind of public pushback, uh, there was some behind the scenes conversations that were happening apparently. And at the same time, the mayor then was going into a re-election campaign in 2015. So the political stakes are a little bit different. Whereas like right now, this process is going to be kind of ongoing through through this next election cycle. So one of the things that this getting back to like what can we as advocates do, I think staying engaged in the process now as it's happening. Like Jason said, this is going to be a really exciting year to actually turn out and support things. Like letting your alderman know early and often that you're excited about this, and we'll certainly help remind folks of those opportunities. But also as we enter into the local municipal election cycle, just like we did last time around, talking to people who are running for city council, running for mayor, about the importance of bus priority streets. We had a big mayoral forum last time around, at TBD if we do something similar, but getting people on record expressing support and stuff like that is a big part of what our job is, to make sure that we're building that political will, so the good people at CTA and CDOT can do their good works. So I think there's going to be a lot to do this year in addition to engaging in the process. Also looking at how can we use the upcoming election cycle to keep this as a priority for our transportation agenda. But I'm very hopeful that we are in a different place than we were with Ashland. and in no small part to the really great and thoughtful work that Jason and others have been doing. So thank you for all of that.
Yeah, one other thing that we may or may not have touched on that's ancillary to this discussion, and we're trying to fold an element of that into our Transit Equity Day event, and it's been there's elements of response to this issue in the NETA legislation, and what I'm referring to is what we call um, equity. We call it ETOD for equity transit oriented development, which is probably the best example is the Lucy Parsons Gonzalez apartments by the Logan Square Blue Line. But trying to that's just part of building ridership and building destinations, and also trying to respond to the housing crisis, and just more of this community building that I think transportation advocacy is really about at its bottom line.
Thank you all. We have about 7 minutes left, so I don't see any more questions on the Q&A. So thank you all
Actually,
for.
there is one more, and I'm not sure, Jason, if you'd be able, because it's more of a CDOT question. But are there any efforts at working with JC Deco or CDOT around having some additional amenities for bus stops that do not have room for a full shelter, but could potentially have a semi seat and or integrated cover for shade umbrella on a totem, while still fitting in a spot that essentially just has room for a pole? Do you know anything about kind of more micro amenities?
Jim's right. The street furniture contract and any benches and shelters, including the contract with JC Deco, is managed by the city of Chicago and not CTA. We work with them to, do siting and put it at the locations with the highest ridership and things like that. But to your point, it's really dependent on the existing sidewalk widths as to what can fit. So we've given feedback to the city about, in the future, if there's opportunities to, at some point had renegotiate a contract or, looking towards the future, kind of like a wish list of things that CTA would like to see based on what we've heard from our customers. And one of those is to have, a narrow footprint shelter that would fit on narrower sidewalks. So holistically, as a city, I think, I'll have to defer to CDOT, to answer that question. As far as the corridor study, and when we're looking at this, part of like the trade-offs, the pluses and minuses that we're looking for or looking at in different concepts is that in places where we do create more space for bus stop amenities, that can give or creates the opportunity for our partners at the city to put in more robust infrastructure, for example, if it's a center median station, then we could have something that looks more like Loop Link. And the Loop Link stations are managed by JC Deco and the city, for example. But the concept for creating that footprint for the stations, as part of the Loop Link project, which was done in partnership with CTA.
Cool. Thanks for answering that, Jason. And now, uh, don't see any more questions now. Down to 4 minutes. So just gonna go through the slide of Chicago Advocacy Hot Topic. I already quickly mentioned transit funding and reform. Then we kind of went through it over the presentation as well. So gonna shift it to capital bond funding and micromobility to Jim, who's been leading on that as well.
Yeah, so at the end of last year, folks might have seen our action alert go out about concern that the city's capital improvement plan didn't have the same level of local bond funding for walking, biking, and transit infrastructure. So this is a specific kind of funding source that we've seen roll out since 2022 that has really enabled CDOT to, build more protected bike lanes and bus bulb outs and pedestrian refuge islands and other good things to a greater scale than they ever have before, because they're able to use this money quickly and to use it on high quality projects. So we know that this kind of local bond funding for complete streets has been really important. So a new bond was just passed at the end of last year. Um, but the kind of overall plan included a kind of a big drop off in funding for starting in 2028 and 2029. So while the next couple of years we still have the money is still flowing, we're still kind of concerned about the fate of those resources beyond 2027. And we've been talking to the mayor's office and with folks at CDOT to get a better handle on what exactly is going on. So we're gonna have to continue advocating for this. What we heard from them is that this is kind of a part of their process, and that as projects are identified for those out years, the money will be added into the capital improvement plan, and that's kind of a change in how they've been doing things compared to past iterations of this plan. Um, so we'll believe it when we see it, and we're working hard to kind of keep the pressure on top of them to make sure that we see those resources being added back into the plan. So stay tuned. This is another thing that we'll definitely be talking about during the 2027 municipal election cycle. And then just yesterday, the Illinois Secretary of State launched a new micro mobility safety kind of campaign that has several different facets, including kind of a public education campaign, working with different drivers ed programs, but then probably most impactfully looking at developing some legislation on kind of regulating some of the unregulated micromobility devices. So micromobility being things like scooters, electric unicycles, skateboards. E-bikes are already regulated, but really high-powered e-motos or e-mopeds are ironically not regulated. So while there are age restrictions on some of the available e-bikes, if you get a more powerful electric motorcycle that goes even faster, there actually isn't an age restriction or things like that. So we're working closely with the Secretary of State and other stakeholders on kind of informing that legislation, but something that's going to be coming down the pike. And we really want to make sure that we're not, throwing the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to making sure that these really important lightweight electric vehicles that are getting people out of cars are still accessible to anyone who wants or needs them, but also making sure that we're keeping our streets and our trails safe. So stay tuned for more than that. And then I'll just close it out with Robert mentioned Transit Equity Day is February 4th next week, Rosa Parks' birthday. We'll be hosting a bus event with a bunch of community members and agency leaders and elected officials. And so stay tuned for a report back on that. But another example of the work that we're doing to kind of build broader support for bus priority streets, and we should have an update on that event after next week with some video and blogs and stuff like that. So stay tuned for more.
Thank you, Jim. We went through questions, and if you want to get in contact with myself or our colleagues, it's our first name and then at activetrans.org. Stay connected. So we do the city every other month, and we do a suburban call every other month. So the suburban call is coming up on February 4th, state legislation and ride Riverside. So our colleague Maggie will be leading that, and then we'll be back in March for the next City Advocacy Connect call. So thank you all for joining us, and have a good Friday.